Okay, once I give a okay sign, then we can start. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, wait. Let me just. Okay, ready? Ready one? Right? Are you ready? Okay, yeah, we can start.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third installment of TCC Chat 2020. Where are the jobs? Where we have a conversation with our professional in our community from various fields and industry. I am one.
I'm AJ.
We are your hosts as usual. So for the third session, we have our professional, Encik Alwi Hafiz. Hi, Encik Alwi.
Hi.
Great. Thank you so much for your willingness to join us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. For those of you who do not know Encik Alwi, let me just give you a quick introduction. So he graduated from NUS as an electrical engineer. He had a pretty varied career, starting off in a consulting firm and then spending 18 years in HP, starting as an engineer and then ending his stint there as the director of operation for HP Consulting for Asia Pacific and Japan. And he then took a role as the managing director for BSI in the Southeast Asia until he left in 2013 to be retained as sustainability advisor for Golden Veroleum Liberia, while starting up some businesses in tech and also a small VC fund with some friends. He also actively serving as a board member of various companies, statutory boards, and also non-profit organization. He, of course, joined us since our first inception in 2018 as one of our speakers. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation. Encik Alwi, the youth listen about sustainability. It sounds very cool. What exactly do you do in this sustainability area?
Okay, so yeah, as you say, sustainability seems to be a very much used term right now. In fact, one of my friends, an architect, actually says it's probably the most misused term, in the industry. Everybody wants to be sustainable, wants to be seen as sustainable, and so on. Now, what I do personally is actually a very small part of it. I actually work for a palm oil company. So many of you probably will think immediately that palm oil and sustainability don't go together. But the fact of the matter is that palm oil is a very important commodity. It's found in many products which we use daily. It is it is the most highest yield vegetable oil on the planet. So if you replace palm oil with some other vegetable oil, you'll actually be using much more land to get the same amount of oils, for example. So the key thing is to make sure that this commodity is sustainability grown, processed, and all that. So that actually takes up quite a bit of what I do. One of my role is actually to try and ensure that our operations are sustainable from an environmental standpoint as well as a social standpoint. And the way we do that is actually to ensure compliance to a standard called or set by this Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. Right? In a nutshell, that's what I do.
And how did you, because you graduated as an engineer, how did you go from engineering into something that's so cool like sustainability?
Well, you can say I almost stumbled into it. When I joined BSI, BSI is actually a product testing and certification organization, a company, right? So my role was to actually build up the business in Southeast Asia. And we were approached at that time by RSPO, the founding members for RSPO, Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. They wanted a professional body to actually be able to come in and assess the sustainability of that commodity. That's how I stumbled into this whole area of sustainability, right? So I became very intrigued in this area, and also I felt that it was a very important field, and therefore I delved a little bit more deeper into it. I got involved personally into some projects And the most memorable one was actually when we were called in to assess the validity of some claims made by Greenpeace to a certain company, which caused major buyers to actually stop buying from the company. So the company approached us together with the advice of the buyers as well to verify these claims by Greenpeace, right? And we found in the end that actually out of 10 claims, 5 were valid, 5 were, not substantiated. And that, sort of like showed me, that things are not so black and white out there, right? So and the best way to actually address the problem of sustainability is look at facts and actually address the issues. Yeah. Sorry, a long answer to a question, but that's how I stumbled upon it, and therefore I became thereafter I was retained by one of my clients to actually help them in their operations in Africa and then Indonesia as well.
Was it already a cool word back then? Because I think nowadays youth sustainability, we're quite familiar with it. But when you started into this area, I mean, is it? I mean, are people of your generation already familiar with this kind of thing, or it's starting up?
Oh well, I think it is known. However, I think it's not generally. It's known in certain industries and all that. But it's not a very commonly. It wasn't a very common, so to speak. Yeah. At that time, this was more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. But I think today, sustainability, I mean, in every company, we could find a sustainability officer, especially as a big company. And how do you manage with your involvement with the businesses and also the entrepreneurs in a VC? How do you balance both?
Okay, so this is something which was quite lucky. When I actually left the BSI to actually do a tech startup. But when one of my major clients found out, they actually proposed that I spend half of my time helping them out, being retained as an advisor. And then I can spend half of my time working on my other projects, including the tech startup and all that. So it was an ideal situation. On one hand, I get paid a salary while doing my own business. And that arrangement actually carried on until I was asked to do more. So now I spend about 80-90% of my time on my job, an actual job, paid job. And then the rest I spend on a couple of things, including the VC fund, which was started with a number of partners. Yeah. So I have a flexible working arrangement, so that allows me to actually focus on a number of things besides my job. Yeah.
Okay. So, Alwi, maybe you can share a bit like when you were toggling with the two of them, when you were managing like your startup as well as being retained as a mentor. How did you manage both? Was it very difficult? Was it like how was it like?
Actually, no. In fact, it wasn't difficult at all, and maybe the working hours helped because my main activity at that time as an advisor was to the client's operations in Africa. So my African colleagues generally start work 4 p.m. our time, which is about 8 a.m. their time, right? So I have quite a number of hours where I can, flexibly focus on other things as well. Yeah, so to me, it's fortunate that it happened that way. But even if they were working in the same time zone as me, I think it's just a matter of understanding what needs to be done. I think nowadays you don't have to be physically present anywhere to do your job, as we see today, right? Many people are working from home and all that, so you can actually easily quite toggle between a couple of assignments. Or potentially even jobs, as long as there's an understanding with your employer. Yeah. So I think for me, it wasn't an issue. In fact, I enjoyed the variety of things, rather than being stuck to one job or one role. I think that's something which I treasure. Yeah.
Yeah. how would you say this COVID-19 outbreak that takes us unprecedentedly affects your work, both in your sustainability field and also in your VC field?
Okay, so I think clearly this is a very challenging situation, and I think the biggest issue is really the impact on the global economy as a whole. So it's actually impacting many organizations, almost everyone. If not immediately, potentially in the future. Yeah. So similar to us in my sustainability role, um, although we are dealing with a commodity which is considered as essential, and therefore the market is still there, the demand is still there. However, the prices may actually go down because of the economic situation. Demand might actually not be as high as usual and all that. So yeah, there is an impact, obviously. Fortunately for us, we've had not been forced to scale back our operations and so on. So people still have jobs, so which is good. In terms of working arrangements, me and my colleagues, as I mentioned before, even though we don't have to go to the office, we are able to do our work from home. We have daily catch-ups via Zoom and those kind of things. So I think it's fine. From my other role, for example, in my involvement with the VC, I mean, it's very clear that whereas the COVID situation has also shown that technology is important, is IT, for example, infrastructure as well as applications and all that are important for us to help overcome the situation in terms of trying to lead a normal life. But clearly, it is very challenging to some startups, for example, who are not well funded, right? So temporary dip in business, so they are unable to actually maintain the operations, they close down. So we see that happening to quite a number of companies, even though they have promising technology and all that. So it's a pity. But the more well-funded firms obviously are still okay. Yeah. So it remains to be seen what is the longer-term impact. But clearly there is impact. At the same time, as mentioned, it actually raises opportunity as well, right? For example, technology. Clearly everybody now understands that it is important for us to have the necessary infrastructure. The next time this happens, right? So I think all these things potentially may actually create some opportunities as well. Yeah.
Okay, so Encik Alwi, you mentioned about like SMEs starting up and everything. Maybe you could share with us, what about those, let's say, entrepreneurs who would like to start up, would like to start something after this situation? What advice would you give them?
Well, so I think one of the lessons which COVID has taught us is that, there is a clear gulf between what is essential and necessary versus what is, maybe a want and not a need. So I think any startup out there should actually, or potential entrepreneurs who want to set up something, might want to take this into consideration, right? That what you do obviously should add value, but the question is whether how essential it is, right? Can it actually survive a situation like what we are seeing now, which actually potentially might happen again, right? Or can it even thrive in such a situation, which we see some companies actually experiencing. Like, for example, we are using Zoom right now, right? For this interview, I think their shares skyrocketed because of the situation. So I think essentially, to me, the question is to really question yourself the value of what you're bringing to the market, how resilient it would be facing situation. And finally, and thing is that often or access to funding, which will enable you to actually see through the expected, problems which may arise in your journey. Yeah, I think those are the few things you have to consider.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that more and more entrepreneurs now are going digital because of this, I think?
Well, I think clearly there is that is one of the areas which we see a lot of people going into, and an area which there is a lot of opportunity as well. But maybe because that's the focus of our VC, we actually focus on technology startups rather than anything else, right? But I'm sure there are opportunities in brick and mortar businesses as well. So I think really, uh, uh, yeah, I mean, opportunities actually are always there. It's a matter of seeing them and then taking action. Yeah. So yeah. So, but certainly, IT, digital economy is something which there are tremendous opportunity. I mean, that's very clear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what do you say, Alwi, for young graduates who are graduating this year, or young professionals who are, moving into a new job this year? Because I think, to quote you here, you say, "Tie your camel and trust in God." I think it's about readiness, right? I mean, TCC is also about career preparedness, so that we are more future ready. But this is the time that no one is expecting. This is the first time for us youth, not like we are the war generation, or even when the financial crisis happened, we were still young. So now that we are working and we experience this kind of tragedy face to face, so what do you say to them who are graduating this year, or who are looking for a job this year? What would you say to the youth?
Well, honestly, I think everyone realizes that it's going to be a difficult year for graduates, right? I think that's going to be expected. My advice would be that uh, at this point in time, don't just look at what your longer term plans, what you want to do, and all that. Uh, and look at what's available, right? Sometimes it might not actually fit in very nicely to what you see yourself doing and all that. But based on my experience, right? I've been working for more than 30 years. Uh, Opportunities come when you actually meet people, when you actually develop a personal branding of yourself and all that, even in fields which are totally not related or you don't plan to go into. So my advice is that uh, you know uh, uh, perhaps this is not the time to be so selective, right? If there is an opportunity, take it and make the best out of it, right? And even if it's an internship or whatever, some of these things will actually develop into potential careers and all that, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just ask the floor. For those of you who have joined, thank you so much. If you have any questions, we are open to the floor. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands. Or if let's say you're a bit shy, you can also drop the questions in the chat box and we will direct it back to Encik Alwi. Yeah.
Yep, yep. For those of you who have joined, we have Encik Alwi Hafiz with us today. We have been talking about, of course, his career journey from an engineer to become someone in the sustainability space, something that's very cool nowadays for those youth, and also his experience when it comes to the VC side. So we were talking about some of the challenges, Encik Alwi, earlier on how this COVID-19 outbreak impact the current work that you do, and what would you say to the youth who are, facing the kind of challenges they face as they look for a new job. What would you say to them for those who want to be in that sustainability space that you are in right now? At this point of time, what kind of skills do you think is necessary? Not just those who are from engineering background. I think sustainability is something that is multidisciplinary. Like you can come from all different kind of fields and then enter sustainability. What's the plan for us to get into the thing that you do now?
Well, like I mentioned just now, personally for me, I stumbled into this, right? But I think for someone who actually wants to go into sustainability, it's actually a very, very broad area, right? So I think you have probably to ask yourself what aspect of sustainability you want to get into. So just to give you an example, right? Uh, opportunities can range from being in the NGO area, where essentially your role is activism, right? To actually look out for ways and means to actually put the message out there, gather support, and then make change happen, for example. So that could be one area, and if that's the case, then certainly you might want to actually look at the likes of the environmental or social NGOs who are into this area, right? Uh, and uh, and then have a dialogue with them. But there are other areas in sustainability on the corporate side. As you indicated just now, uh, many organizations have begun to set up departments to look at sustainability, essentially to ensure that their operations are sustainable and all that. So, as you also mentioned, there is no strict uh, entry criteria into this field, but you might want to do your homework. For example, clearly you must understand what the United Nations SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, if I were an interviewer, I mean, that's the first thing I would ask, right? Do you know what the SDGs are? And then, and so on and so forth, right? So do a bit of work. There are online courses which you can take to actually develop a little bit of more specialized understanding and all that. So I think that kind of preparation would be interesting and relevant, especially since there are no or very few specialized courses in sustainability in university, for example, right? And the other thing is, as I mentioned, do your homework. Which part of the field you want to go into, on the corporate side, on the NGO side, or in the banking side, where banks are also looking for such people to ensure that their clients, the people they lend to, have operations which are sustainable, who will not lead them to be criticized for lending into, for example, a dirty business and so on, right? So, in a nutshell, decide which part of the field you want to go into, do a bit of homework, and then prepare yourself by getting yourself what do you call it, up to speed on the industry terminology, and you can do this by doing some online courses. I think there are quite a number of them. Yeah,
yeah.
that would be my advice.
Do we need to be really care about the environment to be a good sustainability person?
Well, I honestly think it helps. Yeah. And if I were an interviewer trying to interview someone or trying to hire someone, I would be looking for that as well.
Okay.
Right? When you are passionate about something, and it's not just sustainability, I mean, in any field, I mean, if you're passionate about that area, I mean, it will show, number one, and it will help you land the role, especially if you're competing with 100 other people for the same job.
Great. So all of the environmental friendlies, youth would be interested to hear that. Great. My last question, Alwi, since AJ, do we have any questions on the floor? If not, I'll proceed to my last question on, because you mentioned earlier on about, I think youth need to find out what's available out there and then just take it out for the meantime. Are you aware of some available opportunities or platforms existing now that, the youth can venture into if they are interested into sustainability or maybe some entrepreneurship stuff?
Yeah. So I would suggest, right, perhaps the corporations at this point in time are the best place to look, because the larger companies, they are probably in a better position to hire, right? Either interns or actual positions. So I would point to companies, for example, people we deal with are the big, I call it PCG, package consumer goods people like Unilever, Procter and Gamble, and all that. I think sustainability is a very key area for them. I'm not sure whether they are still hiring at this point in time, but I do think that, or we do observe that these organizations take sustainability quite seriously and actually have quite a strong team. So we might want to look that direction. Banks, as I mentioned, also hire or beginning to hire in this space. So that's another area as well, right? So I don't know of specific opportunities, for example, but I believe these are the broad areas you might want to actually explore. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Encik Alwi. And what's your greeting for the Raya, the coming Raya? Maybe if we close with your Raya greeting. How can we have a sustainable Raya?
Well, I think this year at least we are forced to be as such, right? Because less traveling and less visiting and all that. But I think the best greeting is still our traditional greeting. Selamat Hari Raya, maaf zahir dan batin.
Selamat Hari Raya, everyone. And that's it. That concludes our third session with Encik Alwi Hafiz. For those of you, stay in touch with our Instagram at tertiary.cc, tertiary.cc. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.